Hello and welcome back to the O3 Dropcast. My name is Craig, aka Poopy. I'm joined today by my co-host Smithel, and unfortunately, Brice can't be here with us today. But we still have a lot to cover after a little bit of a hiatus. So we're looking forward to it. Smithel, how you doing?
Good, good. It's actually good to be back. I know we were elbow deep prepping for RTN season and everything going on there, so we did take a little bit of a hiatus, but it is good to be back and talking about everything that has happened in our absence.
Yeah, so let's first off address something that our viewers probably aren't aware of. You decided to bring Azalea to an RTN because someone tweeted at you that you should, even though you had been practicing Fang. Is that how that went down?
Yeah, pretty much. So again, I've played Azalea, I think maybe 3 times before the RTN,
Yeah.
and I was sitting there like, I will say I don't know how anybody else felt, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about it later about kind of the hero pool and just the bloat that we're having. But this is the first RTN season where I legitimately didn't know what the heck I was going to do until literally the morning of,
Yeah.
because I had so many options, none of them felt great. I was
Mhm.
practicing Fang, but I just felt like Fang didn't cut it. I didn't want to play Syndra. I was still missing some of that. Didn't have Claves for Arachne. So I was pretty much between a Dory build, a Fang build, and a Slippy build.
Mhm.
And I think I posted on Blue Sky something along the lines of, "Oh God, I don't know what to do. I have so many choices, and God forbid if somebody shows me a solid Azalea deck." Like, just as a joke.
Yeah.
Of course somebody says, "Hey, here's an Azalea deck," and I looked at it and I go, "This may work." And so I brought it, and I was like, as long as I pair into Syndra's or super aggro stuff, I'll be fine. I paired into everything I wasn't prepped for,
Yeah.
and it did not go well. I went 2-2 before I dropped, but
Mhm.
still, probably would have done better if I would have stuck to my guns.
I think I've been 3-3 at both of the RTNs. It has not been a good season for me either. I played Ira at the first one, and Ira just that first week was just like going into it. I was just like, oh my god, this deck is so good because I was playing so many matchups against Hatchet Story
Mm-hmm.
or like even Verdance. I was playing a lot of like matchups where it was just like, oh, this is working really, really well. No one had really brought the Syndra list around yet
Mm-hmm.
because it had like just won a calling before the first weekend. That was like a pretty recent discovery for the first weekend. And I was still feeling like I feel fine into this matchup. But then my first round of that RTN was against a trap Riptide, and it was just like, I don't want to play this anymore. I don't want to play this deck. And so I'm back on Vincent and didn't have the best performance this last weekend. Wasn't the worst. I lost to two Slippies and a Kano. Um,
So you got
and
KO'd pretty hard.
I got Kano'd in a turn cycle. I believe I went from 38 to 0 because
Yep.
I think their turn. So they started the game off, and their turn 0 was actually it was I'm on the play. So I think I put out like a runic incantation, or I put out some sort of aura. Maybe I play a funeral moon. Doesn't matter. Uh, Point is, I'm not going to take blood debt this turn. I'm playing something on the field, and they go, okay, Kano, um, potion of clarity from top, and then their turn is uh, potion of deja vu, pitch second potion of clarity, I think.
Gross. Yep.
And so it must have been more than that because by the start of their second turn, they had energy pot, two clarities, and a deja vu, and it was just like, well, this isn't going well.
Well,
Um,
the writing's on the wall at that point.
and I did bring Spell Void for AB4, and I on their turn they send. I think they send Aether Flare for like 6 with a face up Blazing Aether in Banish. I don't think they had like a snapback or anything. I think it was just those, but I was like, I have to pop like some Spell Void here so that this isn't blazing for 12 and
Yeah.
I've got, like nothing I can do. And then their next turn was their combo Wildfire, and it didn't feel good. I'm an original Kano hater. I think the deck is like cool, but I think it makes for really bad play experiences for your opponent sometimes. Like, honestly, there are some Kano games where it's like, that's great. But there are others. And I think this is like, I had the same experience at the Armory the other day where I was like, I played a Cilio, I got paired into a Prism. I told him right away, like, I don't want to play this matchup. You can have the pack. Let's like play a different matchup.
Yeah.
And then they were like, no, let's do this. And I was like, okay. And my opponent, good player, nice person, but it was just like, there's no way this matchup can like resemble fun for me. There's nothing, there's not like, there's no sequencing these cards here in which I'm not like about to take 14. And so I do feel like I am a bit of a salty. I am salty with Kano. Kano specifically is one where it's just like, I don't want to say that Kano is like a deck about high rolls, because it really isn't. Like, there's a lot of methodical Kano players and stuff. And my opponent was too. My opponent was a good Kano player. Like, no mistake. They did not just get lucky. They played really smart. But when they do get lucky, it's just like, oh, fuck. Like, they hit the slot machine and it's just 7s. And you're like, okay. How it's like that classic, like, all right, you tell me how much damage I'm taking.
Yep.
And I just kind of believe them. So it was a rough start to RTN season. That's enough whinging on my part. We got more whinging to get into eventually, but let's celebrate for a moment a Living Legend update. Viserai has hit Living Legend, the first of the original 8 heroes.
The first of the OGs, yeah.
Yeah. I am happy with this. I didn't really think that Viserai was like, he wasn't my most hated best deck. Like, I've definitely played into best decks before. Like, I mean, the Summer of Zen was just like, it was another one of those games where it was like, it didn't matter who you were on, but a lot of the time it was just like, as soon as they put their equipment in front of an attack, you're just like, all right, man, we can just scoop. Like, I know you're about to just Art of War. You're gonna do the whole thing, and it was just like, pretty brutal. I didn't totally feel that way with Viserai, even though like the Mordred Tide turns got pretty insane. Sure. Where did you land on Viserai as a best deck?
So I mean, I definitely think with the current cards that he got from Rosetta, he clearly, especially after the needle ban and everything with Ira, he clearly was the best deck for the meta and for the format right now.
Yeah.
Unlike some other decks that have LL'd in the past, I never felt that bad going into a Viserai. I mean, there were certainly some matchups where I'd be like, okay, I'm not favored in it, but it didn't feel like getting Kano'd, as we talked about before, where it was like, you know, sometimes like if it was the OTK Vis from back in the day, you're like, okay, I'm watching you build a rune chance. I know it's coming. If I don't find a way to get through soon, that's on me, you know, or I don't have it. Or, you know, it was always fun to kind of sit there and find a way to survive that. Like if they didn't know the deck enough that they kind of pulled the trigger early and you were able to survive it, that felt real great because like you just watched everything crumble in front of them. So I mean, the current version being very aggro, very kind of heavy, we'll say, on damage, especially coming out real quick, was always interesting to see. But I never felt like, oh, this is unbeatable, regardless of how high of a win percent that he has right now.
I did feel that like my problem with Viserai was like your high turns, your turns where you're like, I've just got the sauce. They're just like, oh yeah, I did you forget that I am Viserai? I block like a maniac,
Yep.
and it was just like, yeah, I've got this fridge, I've got these cards, they block three, I've got a couple, couple that block two, but
Yep.
a lot of times it just felt like, wow, what don't you do well?
Yeah, I mean, earlier on, I felt like that was at least somewhat balanced out because you could just sit there and do like a Warmonger's turn, or every once in a while they just drew a hand that kind of bricked as a Viserai player.
Yeah.
We're like, well, I guess this is a setup turn, and then you had a chance to kind of get tempo back and
Mhm.
make something happen. But the recent iteration, whenever we kind of got the Rosetta cards in, it felt like Viserai had less of those bricked hand turns, and just even the off turns where they didn't attack and just set up the board state, it was just a value nightmare as an
Yeah.
opponent.
Because I
So
mean, you could still just like pitch to your grasp or use a malefic to get your rune ragers going, and it's still just like there's
still get
three.
there.
You end up sending like three head jabs. Some of them have arcane damage, and it's just like, yeah, they're not set up huge for next turn, but it's still like you still go, rune rager for three and a rune chant, rune rager sword, and it was just like,
Yep.
well, that wasn't really the. Actually, I guess I don't know. They actually, you can't do that. You have to have Malefic out for that one. But like,
Mm.
there were times where it's like, okay, well, what's the sauce in Viserai? All right, warmongers, and then you do it, and they're like, nah, that actually, that's not as good as it used to be. That used to just shut them off. Like when that card was printed, that deck died. Like
Yep.
just died.
Yep.
And then eventually it got to the point where it's like, no, I still have options.
Yep.
So Warmongers actually is like a good pathway into talking about one of the topics that I wanted to talk to you about today. Um, I think that right now we're in a place where, first of all, there are currently 38 heroes that are legal in CC.
Mm-hmm.
There's 37, right? So Viserai is coming out, Vault is coming
Yep.
in.
Yep.
Okay, so 37 heroes that are legal. Last year around this time, I believe there were 24.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have all of Mistvale, all of Heavy Hitters. The only hero that LL'd last year was Dromai. Only hero that LL'd this year, Viserai, and we got like 13 heroes. So,
Sure.
we've definitely had some bloat, and we've also had like an increase in archetypes in the form of CYB, certainly. And just like decks having more flexibility in what they want to present. Like Ira can still run the 9 flak, combos and flick flaks value, or it could be running flick knives. And that's just one example, but there are plenty of examples of decks having more pathways open to them for how they want to build their decks. And I think right now, my frustration isn't with the fact that there are too many heroes. It's that there's no good way, in my opinion, to target what you expect in the field
Sure.
without completely overlooking a type of deck. And
Yep.
I think that like the way I'll illustrate it first is with CYB, because obviously this is an easy one to do it with. I'm not trying to go just down the rabbit hole of how much I don't like that card, but these are all of the heroes. I'm just going to read them off from the list here. I'm going to point out every hero that I have seen run CYB. Okay.
Sure.
I have seen Betsy, Bravo, Dash IE, Dorinthia, Enigma, Phi, Florian, Ira, Jarl, Kasai. I've seen New, Olympia, Reinar. Yep, I've seen Reinar. I haven't seen Riptide, but Reinar, Bolton, Teklavossin, Victor, Verdance. That's all of them, right? Those are the ones that I've seen.
I would say you've forgotten the OG Arachne Huntsman. also
Okay.
was CYB
Yes,
variants. But
yes, you
yeah,
did. Yeah, you did that.
I
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was a couple out there. I mean, yeah,
Okay.
it's a big list.
So when you have, I would say that was probably about 18 heroes that I just
Sure.
listed. I don't know what, I didn't count as I was going. Um, when you have 18 heroes that could be on that sort of deck archetype, how are you supposed to plan like a sideboard when you always have to like be prepped for that? When you
Mm-hmm.
always have to make sure that you are either banishing cards from their graveyard, or you are playing cards like Poison the Well, you are negating their instants, and at the same time make room for things like Warmongers for when those are relevant, Poppers in case Prism becomes relevant. How are you making sure that your deck is both able to play on the beatdown and a more mid-range style if that's what the matchup is like dependent? Because it's not always just I need to play into this different archetype. Sometimes it's just I need to shift a gear, but still
Mm-hmm.
keep to my game plan. I'm just shifting
Yep.
like one small thing, like Acilio. It's like, okay, I'm not going to run Fry. I'm going to run Eclectic because I just need 3 blocks. And in another matchup, I'll want the Go again. And then Fry is
Mm-hmm.
great. It's not necessarily I am running a silver bullet card here. It's just I need flexibility in my game plan. So you have to
Sure.
have flexibility in your game plan. Then you have your silver bullets, and then you have things like your equipment suite, your arcane barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So, how are you feeling about the current state of sideboarding? Obviously, I feel that I'll say that what I think needs to happen is I think it needs to increase to deck size being 85 cards. Currently at 80.
Yeah, I think if they would, especially with, I think I share similar concerns to you. First off, is my fear is this being an eternal format type of game where every set is legal unless there's a card that gets banned or hit. My fear very much is as we continue to grow and we continue to get more sets, it is going to be harder and harder to plan around these various variants that we see or the things that we may have to anticipate. I think it's a little easier when you're talking more of the high level events because you just assume top players are going to be bringing in these top competitive decks. However, that being said, is as we go on, we may still get 2 or 3 that are pretty equal or 4 that are pretty equal. How do you sit there and plan within that 80 card limit, and knowing that you're gonna have equipment and arcane barrier, things like that? How are you going to plan for potentially 2 or 3 decks that maybe equally dominant in the meta as we go on, without necessarily just having to say, well, I'm going to gamble and put the hate in for Syndra and hopefully I don't hit a Kano or something like
Yeah.
that. I think that's kind of my biggest fear going on. I think giving us a couple more cards, I don't think that that's going to become so powerful that it's going to break anything.
Yeah.
I also, and I think it just gives us a little bit more flexibility to prep for this. Like talking about the RTN and things like that we went into, I built a deck that I just had to say I don't have enough sideboard slots to prep for everything. So what do I think is going to be most represented? And being when it's a local RTN thing, I think you get a more wide variety of heroes, which makes it harder to prep for because people are just going to bring their pet decks and things they love to play. Like my round 2, I played around 2 or 3. I played CYB Bravo, which is
Mm-hmm.
something I'm like, I can't build a hate in my deck around CYB Bravo. I just don't have the room. Also, you just kind of don't anticipate it. You expect maybe some CYB, but is it going to be on Bravo? Probably not, or at least not at wide enough to justify the hate for that. However, if I had a little bit more, let's say, space in my sideboard or things available to me, I may have said, let me throw in 1 card or 2 cards to prep for maybe the Fatiguier Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
But it just doesn't make sense right now. And I think we're going to run into that where it doesn't make sense to try to plan for everything. And,
Well, and I don't think you should. Like, I don't want to, because what I don't want
no.
to, I don't want it to come across as me saying that like you should be able to prep for every single deck, and every matchup should be 50-50. Like, you're going to go into some matchups where not only are you unfavored, you're unprepared, and you just like call it gem luck, call it whatever. Like, it just like that is going to happen. It will never feel good, but there are always going to be those times where it's just like, yeah, I brought I was on Jarl that day, and man, I only hit enigmas, and
Yep.
like that just
Yeah.
happens. That not much you can do about that. But with the increase of silver bullet cards, and with the increase of archetypes that people could be playing on, it feels like it used to be a matter of like, oh, well, if I play into a new, I can bring in my snag, and that'll
Mm-hmm.
be good to bring in there. Now it
Yeah.
feels like, okay, I can either bring that in, or I could bring in Poison the Well. But am I really gonna like give, how many slots am I gonna give for a deck just to like risk that I don't bring in the right card because I misread my opponent?
Yeah,
Um,
I almost wish that they would also implement for CC something that they did for Blitz, and just say your deck can only be 60 cards, no more, no less. And then we're going to give you the additional 20 card, or, if we said, hey, increase by 5, the additional 20 to 25 card sideboard to do with whatever you want. I think that would be a little bit more manageable, because then I can say, I don't need to necessarily prep for somebody that's going to be bringing in 70 cards in every match, like kind of like my old
so
Trash Olympia deck.
you're saying the Blitz enforcing, not in deck construction but in presentation. You must
Correct.
present. Okay, yeah,
Yeah. Like imagine Blitz, if you can sit there and say, hey, I have a what is it, 52 card with a sideboard.
yeah.
Imagine them saying, I'm bringing in 48. In some Blitz matchups, that's just mayhem.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I mean?
I'm on Yoji, you're on Benji.
Yeah.
Well,
It-
Benji's actually maybe not a good example because maybe you can get through. But
but
like, I'm on Yoji, and
and
I'm
you're on
just
Dash
fat
or something
decking the
stupid. Yeah.
deck, and you're on Dio. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
it's
one
not
of
gonna
those things.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I feel like if it's one of those things that you can sit there and say, "Hey, look, they may have a fatigue plan, which is fine in that 60 cards," because again, you can do that in Blitz. You can play like Big Axe Story or something like that and wear down your opponent. But it's sitting there saying, "I just have to have a fatigue plan and assume that they're going to be on something like a Remembrance or something like that, or codexes to bring cards back into their deck," as
Mhm.
opposed to saying they're going to fat deck by 5 or 6 cards, and now I have to plan for that matchup and the CYB and the Syndras and the aggro and disruption from this. Like, as this game goes on, they're gonna have to do something to address the bloat in card availability and hero size.
Mhm.
Because if not, it's just going to be kind of a roll of the dice of who do you pair into round 1 and 2. If you get the matchups you're hoping for and kind of get into the more predictable table sides, that's great. But if you hit one of those rogue heroes that you just can't or don't plan for because you just don't anticipate the representation, you're just out of luck, and that's going to start feeling real bad.
I mean, I already kind of feel it. Like, I do feel like, we're at a place now where there are so many heroes, and you can have a game plan into as many of them as possible. And then you run into a deck where you're just like, it has been so long since I've played this hero. What do your cards do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I play every day way more than I should. I'm on Talishar constantly. But if I
Mm-hmm.
run into what's a good example? Like a Rhinar,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna need to read most of the cards in that matchup, or even better yet, a Guardian like
Yeah,
that isn't Victor or Jarl. Like,
yeah.
if I have to run
Somebody
into a
should.
Betsy, it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know what you do. I
yeah.
don't I
So
don't know what Betsy's hero ability does.
somebody
Plus
plays
one to a
Betsy.
wager. I don't know.
Somebody plays Betsy and throws down big bet. You guarantee him. Be like, wait, hold on a second. Let's read this card. Figure out what you're trying to do here.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
and
mean,
and that's fine. Like you said, I don't think you have to necessarily have a game plan into every hero, but you should kind of have here's the 2 or 3 that I anticipate are going to be most represented, or the 2 or 3 that are the biggest detriment to the game plan that I have,
mhm.
that I should have an answer to. And then here's some general, like, fatigue, general aggro, general arcane, whatever it may be. and just having a couple more flexibility spots or hard limiting deck presentation size, I
Mhm.
think would be, go a long way to improving how that sideboard and those options feel.
I right now the way that I'm like building my deck on Vincent is I really just have like three approaches, and one of them is just like I'm just sending something every turn because my opponent is just like very gonna be greedy, like Syndra. It's like, yeah, I'm just blocking as efficiently as I can, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'm sending, one rune gate on my turn, and like if I can get a Malefic out, I can start doing that like pretty consistently. I have the plan if it's like, like a Florian or someone. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can't just go right away. They run a lot of blues. So I got to like wait a couple turns. And then I have the plan where it's like, I'm going to go to 15 before I attack, just so I have a bunch of like shit on the board. And
Mm-hmm.
those are like, my sideboard is just those three plans, and then Reaping Blade and Arcane Barrier and
Yep.
Spell Void, right?
Yep.
So like, where I'm at now is it feels almost completely like useless to do this approach of like silver bullets, because you can sit down across from a deck and be like, I'm confident that by running Poison the Well in this matchup, I'm going to have an edge.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still be wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
like, not maybe not the case with Verdance, even though they're not on CYB. You still know like this is a hero that heals. New is a hero that heals just on the value of their cards, but you don't
Sure.
want to play Poison the Well for one. You want to be able to like
Yep.
get value out of stuff. And I feel right now it's like the cards that are good in the meta are like the generic cards, the cards that anyone can think to play. They're very like good on paper, but they feel the worst they've ever felt, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean it's one of those things too that I think it starts making more and more of a case of saying, because of everything that's going on and because of everything you kind of have to plan for, that the best situation may just be to say, I'm going to come up with my game plan. This is how I'm going to play my deck. Have you prepped enough for me and what I want to plan to do to disrupt me?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's not something like, here's my 2 or 3 hard matchups that I need to sideboard and prep for. If
Mm-hmm.
it's anything else, it's just best to say, here's my 60. Do you know how to handle it? And that's kind of why I like heroes like Dory, where it's saying, if you know Dory, you're going to stomp all over Dory as
Mm-hmm.
a high level player. But if you don't understand what she's trying to do, or you haven't played enough or practiced enough into her, Dory will wreck you every day of the week. So I think that's the direction that Flesh and Blood is starting to move more into, is saying, do your game plan and see if they've prepped for you, as opposed to necessarily trying to plan
Change
for
your
everything.
deck to play into the, yeah.
Yeah.
So I could see that. I do think that one of the things that has me worried is the card Anaphylactic Shock, which is the card that made everyone think like, oh, here comes Dromai's Armory deck, this assassin card that like pings life to allies, right? There's a lot of talk about like Necromancer on the horizon,
Mm-hmm.
and the place I see it going is that will work for 40%. What you're saying of just playing your game plan and forcing the question on your opponent if they know how to play around you, and you might know how to play around them. I see that as like, I see that as having like a decreasing effectiveness
Mm-hmm.
as there are more decks that ask you to put cards into your inventory for
Yep.
them. And
Yep.
my fear is that like Necromancer will just be this like board swarm hero, and they're going to print some generic card much like Anaphylactic Shock, where it's going to be like it's going to deal 1 to all of the allies on the
Mm-hmm.
board, and it's like, wow, this Wrath of God effect into Necromancer. Now what does it do into Prism? And it's like
Yep.
it does nothing. In that case, it's like, oh, it really doesn't do anything. You'd be better off not running it, because her angels are just gonna heal. And it's like, okay, so this is now then just a card for one matchup. And like,
Yep.
I worry that uh the more the more versatility in like heroes that are out there, the more you have to think about in the field, the more you have to prepare. I worry that it will not be enough to just know them and have your game plan prep for them, but that they will require you to bring cards. Like
Yep.
you must, like if you do not, thankfully we're not in a, could you imagine if we were in a meta right now with Dromai, original Prism, and new Prism? You would need
Gross.
6s and 7s in every
I,
deck or you could not play the game.
I could imagine that because I wouldn't be playing that meta. I'd be like, I will sit this out until two at least two of these three are gone. I
Yeah.
I will tell you that is my legit biggest fear. As much as I'm excited about the idea of a potential necromancer, that is legitimately my biggest fear for this game is that we're going to start getting a lot more board state heroes as opposed to just this feels like a battle like duking it out between two heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, I
I
have
like
lots of
hero
ways that,
versus hero. Hero versus army is
yeah.
not
I,
as
I think there's a lot of things
satisfying.
I think there's a lot of things that they could do to make board state a thing and still maintain its focus. Like for example, let's talk Dromai. If it was something like the Ashwings after they attacked just went back to Ash, reverted to Ash, like kind of like, hey, I summoned a sand dragon, it smacks you in the face and collapses into sand again. Cool. They're just not these perpetual things that stick around.
Yeah.
Do that with Necromancer where they raise the dead, it attacks once and it goes back to graveyard. Cool.
Oh,
But
bone tokens. You're
yeah,
talking
like,
about bone tokens.
yeah, kind of something
Little
like that.
pile
Like,
of bones on the board.
yeah, my necromancer in my head, and I know this is super specter, making something up and it hasn't been announced or anything like that, was basically like the necromancer would attack with an attack that would go into the graveyard, and then you would have something like, hey, banish 3 of these things to create, banish 3 attacks to create a skeleton or create like a skeletal warrior that when it attacks crumbles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Or
But
like if they have like a resource of like bones and bones are the money.
yep,
And
yep.
like
Yeah, I mean, but that's my fear is that we're moving into, and you kind of see it in some of the cards, but we're moving into more of a board state potential in the future, and like I mean, look. I was a token player, token squirrels and Magic the Gathering Commander and things like that, and it's fun there, but it's not flesh and blood, and so please no more. Please no
I mean,
more.
I think there is a certain amount that we have to accept that it is flesh and blood, even when it doesn't feel
No.
like. I
We
mean,
don't
that's
have to escape it, Craig.
well, because like
You
to
can't
me,
make me force it.
to me, it's like like I said. I mean, I am still salty with losing to several Kanos this week, but like that doesn't feel like flesh and blood to me. It just feels like it honestly just feels like counting crayons. Like it's like, I got the blue one. Like
I get it.
I mean, so look, it is flesh and blood. It's been around here for a while. Board state heroes aren't anything new, but I do think that like if we can't solve the problem, I'll put it this way. We can't solve the problem by adding new cards because the problem isn't cards, in my opinion.
No.
The problem is too many heroes. The problem, like, at its core comes from there's too much that you could have to prepare for. Like, there's just so many possibilities to run into things. And, like, it's crazy to me that half of these heroes are still legal. Like,
do you think that there'd be a case, and God knows the last thing anybody wants is for LSS to redo the LL point system again in such a short time. But do you think that there's any kind of case to sit there and say at tier 3 events or higher, so like we're talking nationals and above, the top 8 heroes all get LL points depending upon where they land? So like first place maybe gets like 100 or something like that. Second place gets 50, and third and fourth,
yeah.
like to kind of help spread out the point distribution so that maybe we get more things to rotate around.
So I'm against that, even though part of me wants to be for it. The reason I am against it is that like I don't want my hero to LL having not won anything. Like
Okay, fair.
I don't want to be like forever a bridesmaid, and then people are like, all right, you're off the market, and it's like, okay, but like I've never had my moment.
That's
um
fair. That's fair.
so I don't like that. I have often thought about like, should they do tiers, or even should they do rotating like cycles of restrictions? Like I was a big fan of the
Mm.
Overwatch League, and one of my favorite things that happened in the Overwatch League at the time that it happened was them introducing a rotation of heroes that were banned from competitive play, which meant the meta shifted every like 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
in this 2 weeks, like you can only play these. Here are the two tanks you can't play, the two, healers you can't play. I thought that was interesting. I think that like all of my solutions that I come up with, that as well as a tier system of saying like, if you're under 500 LL points, your tier this, and that we'll have certain events where you only can play heroes under 500 LL points. The problem I've had with both of these is they're just not good for accessibility of the game. They're just like, it like if I just got into this game, I built my new deck, and new costs over $1,000, and I go to an event and they go, oh, sorry, this is Betsy night. Like, I'm going to be like, well, that sucks. Like, it already sucks that, like, when the hero LLs, you kind of don't really get to play it except for maybe once every like 3 months, if we're being
Yep.
honest about
Yeah.
most places' consistency with LL. Like, so I think a lot of the ways of like solving it just don't feel very good. The other thing is, I don't think you can just like boost points willy-nilly, William Nilliam, because like, yeah, I think that it would be cool if Zen left the format, even though Zen's not doing anything right now. If you
Yeah.
boost points, you know who leaves the format? It's like Syndra. Syndra just skyrockets and then leaves even quicker. And all
That's
these
fair.
people who are like, well, I just started playing Syndra. Like, this hasn't happened yet. We've talked about it every set of like, oh, this one hero is going to like speed run LL. It has never happened since we started talking about it. And the reason is new heroes come in, they take up the meta share. There's a shift, and the hero that was great, like Zen, is all of a sudden not performing well. Even though they're favored into the best deck in the
Yeah.
format, there are other factors at play that make them just not
Yeah.
as good as they were, and B, as played as they were. So like, a lot of Zen players go, oh, I want to play Syndra. I like ninjas, but I prefer Syndra is more my speed. I want to be flicking daggers. That's cool. And then like, if you just try and be like, okay, well, we need to accelerate the LLing of heroes because there's too much bloat, then all of a sudden you accidentally hit a stray. Right? You hit some hero that's just like, they got real too hot too quick, but one expansion slot card later, and they're going to have like a terrible matchup in the meta. Enigma, right? Enigma was insane. Still very good, really good hero, but there's flick knives decks everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
like, if you just try and like be like, oh, we're just going to inject more LL points and try and get this, get these heroes like Dash and Zen, who are above 900, out of the format, just so we have a little bit of breathing room, then you're going to hit a stray. The other problem is, we really can't just have every 4 months them introducing a hero
Yeah.
into the format through something other than like a constructed set. I think
Yeah.
Riptide needs to be reprinted in high seas. We don't need
Should be.
a bunch of new heroes. We need more
I
support for
think
some, but
I think
like,
they could do a lot with just a kind of like a hero reprint set. Like call it like Return to Wraith or something like that. Just give me
retort
enough
to Wraith. Yeah.
where it's Dory in a turtle shell. But no, like just
Yeah.
give me like a Return to Wraith set where it's Bravo, Katsu, Dory, and Reinar again, but just give them a whole bunch of new cards.
I'm
Awesome.
I am
Awesome.
100% for that. I think that like it's so cool to have new heroes. It's great for their marketing. It's really like good for sales, I'm sure, to have
Mhm.
new heroes. But there comes a point where I just want to go like, give me a core set, right?
Yeah.
Give me a set that's just like we'll take the next 4 to 5 months off of adding heroes to the format. Just give me support. It doesn't even need to be for the heroes that are floundering.
Well,
Just
you know how you get around that? Like, imagine, like, so let's say we do that Return to Wraith set, where, and you say, hey, we don't need more heroes or anything like that, but it's like, oh, it is cool, it's good for marketing. Imagine if they gave Katsu a demi hero. Like, imagine if there was something like that, like Leviathan or Teklovossen, where it's just, instead of a new hero this set, here's demi hero Katsu, and we're going to give you all the cards in this set that kind of play into that like flavor.
so I think that's cool for established players and people who already like the hero. But like when I think about like marketing and stuff, I think about just like the banners at SCG Con, right? Like
Fair.
seeing a like Fang and Syndra and Arachne banners right now, people are gonna walk around and be like, oh shit, that's a badass hero. What is that? And if it's like, oh, it's the new hero, it just came out, is a lot cooler than like, oh, that's a hero. They've been around since the beginning of the game and they just got better. Like
That's fair.
that doesn't
That's fair.
sell any new players, right?
Mhm.
So I do think like it's important for LSS to make new heroes because it's part of the business model, right?
Well,
It is part of selling their products. The problem is if we're adding every 4 months a hero like Ira or Valda, and we don't know what the consistency will be. It's about 4 months right now. I think November to February, or maybe Valdo, maybe she's out in March or April. I don't really know.
yeah.
But if they do that, if they do armory decks, and if they do new sets, that's just too fast because, like we've said,
Okay.
there was an entire year of no heroes LLing. Dromai left in like in Q1 of 2024, and then Viserai left in Q1 of 2025.
Yep.
That's too long to have no heroes rotate and to be adding 13 more. Like
Yeah.
it's just it's
I mean,
fine, it's cool in some aspects, but it's not a long-term.
yeah. I think the perfect balance that they did, and this is one of my favorite sets, was what they did for Outsiders was perfect. We got some new heroes. We got return of old heroes, especially in the younger formats for draft, Living Legend, all that. But really, what did we get? We got Azuri, we got Riptide,
That's it.
and that's it. We didn't get a new ninja. We
And,
didn't get another
we got
ranger.
we got Benji, which was already a hero, and then we got Arachne
Uh,
Solitary Confinement, which was a Blitz hero. So, like,
yes.
I agree. I think Outsiders is like we do need more sets like that. I don't think every set should be that, but I think
No.
we do need more like that. Like, I would love if High Seas was that. Like, I think High Seas should have. If it has a ranger, it should be Riptide, and then
Give me Riptide as a ranger. Get it on there. I mean, I know I'm partial, but like I'm like, look, you can give Dory a sword. Like, just give her a new sword and say it's like a pirate sword, and like you got a warrior on like a warrior kind of set. Give me those two. Give me a pirate hero and a necromancer hero.
I'm looking and I'm trying to think, like, because I know people have said like well, we could use a guardian, we could use so people have said like guardian, mech, ranger are some of the ones that I've heard. Bravo, I could see you could absolutely put Bravo in a pirate set.
I could see Bravo on it. I could see Betsy in a pirate set. I could see
Betsy,
you tell me there's not a card where it's like Pirates Cove and there's Betsy just surrounded by pirates, just like tankards of like beer and things like that.
I'm telling you that Betsy and Olympia are forever going to. They are in that location. They can never leave because Wager worked really well there and will not work outside.
I don't know.
Of it.
I see pirates gambling all the time in the movies. That's all.
That's
I'm
true.
saying.
That's true. I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I would even say, you know what? Honestly, if we're gonna bring Valda in, like maybe Valda can be in the pirate set. Maybe she can be the guardian. Maybe pirates have something to do with drawing cards, and it makes sense. I hope they don't, because that would mean we need hold the line again. Like
I mean, it is tough because I think the hero and card bloat is tough. I also sit here and worry, and the one thing is, this has probably been the first time I've ever said since starting to play the game that Flesh and Blood is tough to get into as a new player. So before, I used to make the argument all day saying, you buy a tunic, you're good for life. You buy a CNC, you're good for life. There are so many of these cards that fall into that bloat of like, well, you need 3 CNCs because potentially if the meta shifts this way, you need them in your sideboard, or you need 3 E-strikes.
You just need like, 3 CNCs. Like there's just no like if you want to play the game the way that most people engage with it, like you just need the cards. Like
exactly. And I mean, and it's getting to the point now where the secondary market, because like and it's a kind of a good problem to have, is that the game is growing pretty well from my understanding. I mean, I haven't seen the internal numbers from LSS or anything, but it seems like I think they said something at game, is it Gamescom or whatever that's going on, or Gamma or whatever it's called.
Gamescom is a thing. Maybe Gamma sounds real. I don't know.
There's something going on at time of this recording, and LSS had I guess a presentation there to
Gen Con, maybe.
It's whatever like the local game stores go to and they find out what's going on. But like there's a local game store that went to the LSS convention part of it, and they said, hey, we expected this to be about like a 7 out of 10 set. We didn't expect it to be as popular as it is. So we just don't have enough. Like there wasn't enough print. So it seems like because it's growing so fast, we're seeing that. And between that mixed in with the stores being unable to get a lot of the old sets, like distributors just being out, that it is getting very, very difficult to tell a new player, oh, you can play whoever you want for a reasonable price once you get the staples, because there's just not that much to go around anymore.
I think that what I'm hearing from that makes me go back to what you said about a set like, returning to Wraith, right? Like as like, well, welcome to Wraith 2. And I do think the more I like hear the reprint conversation, the more I think about that, the more I'm like, just, we need a core set. We need a core set, and it's just the original 8 heroes and Azuri, right? Like, yeah, Viserai is LL'd. Okay, that's fine. But we need something where it's just like, hey, this is simply to get the cards for each of these classes back in. And you could argue that strips value out of other things, but I look, they're out of print. They're not. There's no more. Like I'm sorry if you want to start printing more outsiders, I'm all for it. But if you're not going to do it, we need a solution, because I can't tell my friends that I play this game, I love it very much, I think they'd be super into it, and also Codex is 150 and you need 3 of them. And by the way, that's just one card in your deck, and it's not even one of the like equipment pieces that you'll run in other decks. So like
yeah, I mean it's tough because so we have a friend, a local that's going to London, and he's planning on playing new. And he sits there and he says to me, "Hey, look, do you want to buy a Fang mat?" And I said, "Leia, look, what are you thinking?" I said, "Here's the max I'm willing to pay." And he's like, "Look, that's fine." He goes, "I just need to pay for this new deck somewhere or another." And I said, "Well, I have everything. I'll let you borrow it. It's fine. Take it to London." But it's getting tough because you even have these high level players that are sitting there saying, "Unless I come up with like $800, I can't play this at an event that I qualified and was fine to play at." It's getting to the point where you can't just shuffle around like we could in the old days and say, I'm going to take my 3 CNCs out of Dory and put it into Bravo, and I'll be perfectly fine with like minimal upgrades in terms to wallet, because I got the core generics. There's core generics just aren't a thing anymore, and it's just you got the Codex, you're good for Assassin. Oh, you want to play Ninja? You better have Mask of Momentum, and you better have this. Like, everything's starting to get more specialized now, which is good.
There's Arachne lists that don't run CNC, and it's like, but you still need CNC. You can't just not own CNC if you want to like play this game on a high level. Like, I mean, maybe you don't have 3, but eventually you're going to run it. You're going to build a deck where you're like, you know what this deck absolutely needs is some disruption and some arsenal hate and a way around D-reacts. What am I going to bring? It's not Wreck Havoc. You got to do CNC. Like, it's a game where the incremental value on like armor that just starts in play and stays in play, and it has the number 1 written on it, is so much more like than like the implied value of it is just so much more than not having it there. You know, you stop a break point that draws several cards at times, you know, so you can't just go like, oh, well, this other card that blocks 2, that's fine. You can do that for an armory, but if you want to like compete, just know that other people aren't doing that, and therefore like you give yourself a handicap. And I just think that like look, they're making a lot of progress. Like Sound the Alarm was a really good card they printed at Rare, and for generic, like for any sort of like reaction meta. I just think that like right now, it's a wild time to be in this place where it's like, yeah, you absolutely do need these cards, and you might not play them, but you have like it, and maybe this is just my own mentality. Maybe this is just like my own addiction with trading card games, but it's like, yeah, no, I need to have Weakest Link. I can't trade my copies of Weakest Link just because I'm not playing them. Because when I'm going to need them, I bought them at $30. I don't want to pay $80 for them.
Yeah.
So
it's like, imagine telling somebody, hey, you need to pay $60 for 3 copies of Erase Face, just in case maybe you hit a Fang or a Syndra. And, you know, really in Syndra, it's not even that important, but certainly for Fang, like, but if you don't hit one, you've paid $60, put it in your sideboard for a
Erase
deck
Face is dookie. Erase Face is dookie. Like, it's not good. It that's my take. Erase Face is bad. How many Acilios are you playing against? Don't run Erase Face. You don't need it. Just maybe if you have a very heavy Earth meta, but like the new heroes they have fealty tokens. Erase Face is just gonna like, you're going to feel really stupid. Eventually, you're going to feel really stupid when you play Erase Face and they're like, oh, no, anyway, break my fealty.
Yeah.
Art of Dragonfire for 2 and 5.
Yeah, know? It's nuts. I mean, but it's one of those things that I think that's kind of more where the pain point comes for me, especially tying it back into the sideboards, tying it back into, you know, finance and hard to get stuff, is cards are getting harder to get. Cards are more expensive right out of the gate whenever a set gets announced. I mean, like, look at Hunter's Clave. Like, you need it if you want to play Arachne, but having to tell somebody, hey, you got to pay $100 for 2 daggers day 1, you know, well, a month after or whatever the case may be, still hurts. Like, it you know, on top of all the other nonsense that you need just to play Assassin as it is, it's getting harder and harder to tell people it's easy to get into the game, while also feeling bad because it is super easy to get into the game with armory decks. But it's just saying, oh, you like this Aurora deck? But okay, that's nice, but now you got to spend $700 more if you want to compete at a calling. You know what I mean?
It's a like, as you're talking, I'm thinking like, I guess a good question is like, what percentage of players need to have like a Pro Tour level deck? And I just think that like,
not that many.
No, well, the answer is like, very few need to have it. What's the percentage of them that want to have it? And to me, it's like, I think it's like I think we're in like 90%. Like, I think it's a very small majority of Flesh and Blood players who go, I'm okay. If it's out of 5, I'm okay with my deck being a power level 3. Yeah. I think we're just not that type of game, because,
and that's the hard part.
Like, you wouldn't look if you were a Magic player and you played Standard and you went to their Pro Tour and you sat down across from your opponent and went, hey, what power level on the Commander Advisory board like is your deck? They'd be like, what? No, I build the best deck. I build the best deck I can to maximize my odds of winning. I do that every time I compete. If I don't do it well, it's because I'm not as good of a deck builder as my opponent, or like I could get better at deck building, but I'm never going to
Certainly.
be like, yeah, no, I thought about running a card that is like a power level 5, but then I decided, what about a power level 3?
Yeah.
Like,
I think what you said, and it kind of hits the nail on the head of saying how many people need a Pro Tour level deck, and then how many people want a Pro Tour level deck. So me, I've accepted that, hey, look, my age, my availability to play this game with a family and things like that, and
hey,
travel and do all
we're not
that.
winning Pro Tour.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm not going to be the next Pro Tour champion. I guarantee you. If I am, I'm retiring on that win and never touching the game again because I'm not going any higher. You know what I
it's
mean?
it's
But
it's like if you like rob the casino for all they're worth,
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
I'm
done.
never
I'm
playing
done.
blackjack again. I'm never going to a casino again. My legs
Yeah.
are gonna get broken
Yeah.
as soon as I
Yeah.
walk in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things of saying, but when I do get to play and it's RTNs, ProQuest, things like that, I want to have the best deck so I can give myself the best chance to win and play the deck the way that it's meant to be played, as opposed to always having to take budget alternatives, which I understand. Some people, you just have to do budget alternatives. I'm not knocking anybody for that. But you're right in that this is the community. And I think we all kind of share that feeling of, I want to like have the most powerful deck I can because I want to do the thing. I don't want to be
Yeah.
like, well, I lost because I didn't have CNC. If I had it, I would have won.
I mean, I do think that like, look, LSS is a business. They have to make money. I want them to make money. The money that they make, they are putting back into the game. If you don't believe it, you're lying to yourself. You're not paying attention. They absolutely are. But my thing is like, there's, from what I've heard, at this convention that you were talking about in recent, communications they've had with investors or local game stores, they do want to make casual play more inviting, right? They want to, make it less sweaty. There are people that have expressed in the past to me that um, they don't love how everything is competitive and they want some time where it's a little bit more casual. And I would say I have never seen those people bring a deck that doesn't have what I would consider to be cards that the sweaty, the pro, the grindy players have. Because
Yep.
if the thing isn't, the thing is, if you have it, you'll always bring it.
Exactly.
It's like nukes, right? No, but like you all, even if you're playing casual, even if you're like, a lot of people have bought in and have these things, so the culture is going to be very difficult to shift to like, we don't really play CNC or we don't really play Sync Below,
Yeah.
because like,
And unless
we're
it's
not the type of game to rule zero.
yeah, unless it's a special event, like if a store says, "Hey, this is a new player focused night. Everybody bring the your power down decks because we're having a whole bunch of new players and we're going to teach." Different. But you're right. There's tons of people out there in the Reddit world and on social media or whatever that sit there and say, "Oh, everybody's tough on new players. Nobody wants to help." That's not the case. We do, but if you spend $300 on a piece of equipment, you want to play the piece of equipment. You don't want to be like, well, I put it in my binder, but then I'm not going to play it at my LGS.
Yeah.
You're bringing it to the armory. You can be a very nice person, talk to people. I mean, I've conceded on turns where I'm like, I'm going to win this turn, but I concede so you get the pack per win. But I'm playing my powered up deck because I want to play it.
You ever see someone like walk out of an LGS with like 3 cases, and then later they are like, "Oh, well, if only I had powerful cards." It's like, well, I can't really help you.
Yeah.
No, but I do think it's just like, the problem is not going to necessarily go away, and I don't think that like. I don't think that reprints just tank the value completely either. I think like, honestly, I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't care that much about collectability. I really
Neither do I.
don't. I kind of unapologetically don't, even though I just said I'm sorry. I don't
Yeah,
give a crap. I don't care about collectability. I get that people like making money on this game in various
sure.
ways, but like that's just not what I'm here for.
Nope.
I'm not here because
I'm
it makes money.
the thing that drives me nuts is the people that sit there and talk about collectability and the value of cards, but never will sell a card. They'll sit there and be like, "Oh my god, it has so much value." I'm like, "Okay, we'll sell it." No, I don't want to sell it. It's like,
No,
why?
because it
Like,
has value. I'm
no,
not selling it. It has value.
yeah, but I'm playing it. Yeah, and so it's getting in worse condition every time you play it. If you really
Yeah.
care about the value, sell it. Like make the money. Like if you're in it for the collectability and the money aspect, make the money.
Yeah.
I'm not talking long term collectors that keep everything sealed and one day things like that. But me, I've started to shift away from saying I need the super shiny thing. I'm gonna put it all in a binder and like hard snaps. I'm like, I just like playing the game. Like, give me the rainbow foil versions of everything. I'll play that. And then if I get something shiny and I know like somebody else will like it more, I'll sell it or give it to you instead of like hoarding it myself.
I'm pick every set. I pick like one extended art legendary where I'm like, I'm trading for that.
Mm-hmm.
However I gotta get that, I'm getting that. And then everything else is just like, yeah, I'd like it, but like, if I get the rainbow foil version, great.
That's fine.
I don't need to
Yeah.
bling my decks out anymore.
Yeah. If,
Um,
if I if I draw this, if I pull a cold foil version of a rainbow I have, I just swap it out and I put the rainbow in the trade binder. Going, this goes to another home someday.
Hell yeah.
you know.
All right, I feel like we've ranted plenty here. I think give me your like real quick. What's your take on the end of RTN season? Who do you think takes over for Viserai?
So I think with Viserai gone, I think we see an uptick of enigmas again. I think whenever we see a shift like this, people just go back to the comfort level of what worked beforehand. Enigma's kind of top of that list, where I think we see people just go, I'm going to keep playing Enigma. I'm hoping the Syndras kind of keep the Enigma in check, or just everybody agrees to let Enigma win so we can try to LL Enigma as fast as possible. But I think we see a lot of Kanos. I think we see Enigmas. I think I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we start seeing a couple Victors come out of their shells,
Mhm.
uh, and maybe some Zens. But other than that, I'm not anticipating a major shift.
I think Riptide's going to be in a good place.
Yep.
I think I agree that Enigma is probably going to be more represented and do better. I think that like a big thing, like yes, there are all these Flick Knives decks that are out there keeping her down, but like Viserai was a big, like a really tough matchup and was
Yes.
prevalent, like very played, and like I think that like so yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. I don't think they're going to want to see Syndra, but I just don't think there are. Uh, Look, if you get rid of one of your two boogeymen, you're still down one boogeyman, and that's
Yep.
pretty good. I think New is going to be highly represented. I'm interested to see how New does. I don't know the matchups for New very well. I really don't understand. Like, I'm not good at playing into New. I'd love to see like how the matchup goes between her and Syndra, and I do think that
Mm-hmm.
if people just start to feel that they don't really need to think too much about rune blades, maybe
Vince,
Vincent.
Still not bad. Still not bad. I will say the New and Syndra matchup is a pretty good one. If you get a chance to kind of watch a high level of that, because they're both. I think it's about a coin flip right now of who
Okay.
takes it. But it's interesting. But yeah, I think Vincent's still in a good spot. I think Vincent still. We still see a couple wins out of her at the end here.
I played one Syndra when I was on Vincent at the RTN. It was like the only matchup I was just like, please God, just let me play just let me play into Syndra's, because it is a comfortably favored matchup. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that my big thing right now is I think with Viserai leaving, people will be able to find more of that into what the next best hero is like what are the decks that counter it, because people are talking about bringing in Jarl, people are talking about bringing in Prism, but if it's not Syndra and it's New and you're someone who's like, oh please, let me see new.
Mhm.
For the love of God, let me see new. Like, then that I think could be the breakout
Yeah,
deck.
I agree. I mean, the only other thing I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more of is if I'm a Viserai player and I want to play Runeblade and I'm looking for what's the next comfortable Viserai-esque kind of Runeblade, I'm going to Florian. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I think Florian plays very similarly. It's not as different as say like Vincent is or Aurora
Mhm.
is compared to that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Florians. How well they perform, I don't know.
Sure.
But I'd expect that kind of going into this last week or two.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, bye. I don't have a sign off. You got a good sign off?
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like,
I
comment,
hate saying
and
that.
I don't. I love that shit. Do it now. All right. Like, comment,
Awesome.
subscribe. Bye. Bye,
Have a
bye,
good one,
bye,
everybody.
bye. Bye, bye, bye. I've been playing with a fidget cube all night. Bye, bye, bye.